And then I started going to a couple shows in high school. I got to college, met some kids on the first day of whatever it was called, orientation, and they're like, oh, let's go check out the radio station. That had never crossed my mind as something I might want to do, and I loved it, and it became my social network, my favorite thing. And I was like one of the few people that I would do the radio show at any hour if no one else wanted to do it, which often meant I'd get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, do you want to come down and keep the station on?
Yeah.
And I would do that all the time. I stayed there the first summer as a freshman and like practically lived at the station. And as a freshman, another friend of mine came to me and he was like, I'm dropping out of school in a month, but I have this concert I'm putting on the last day of class. Will you take care of it for me? And then I'll teach you how to book a band for next year. And he taught me how to do that. I booked a band for the following semester. I was really into that. It meant calling agents and going through this thing called Polestar and all this stuff. And then the last day of class came up, and that concert, a band called the Feelies, was the best night of my life up until that point, I'd say. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And I dove into like booking some more bands for the following year. I stayed up at school that summer, and a guy came to me about a month in, and he was like, all right, so right now you're putting on this like one show a semester for the college for the radio station with a tiny budget, a few $1,000s or something. How would you like to be in charge of all the concerts? And I was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. I was already like way into this stuff. So like we really quickly went from booking one show a semester to as many as possible. And as a sophomore, I booked Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., Juliana Hatfield, Superchunk, Fugazi, Cypress Hill, a lot of bands I liked. There was no committee or anything. And then I loved every minute of it. I loved it so much that I didn't really go to class. I had very bad grades. But I got an internship at the William Morris Agency the following summer. That's one of the 3 biggest agencies in the world for music. And after the first week, probably the first day, I was like, this is what I want to do. I didn't really know what agents did up until that point. A couple weeks after that, I got fired from my internship. Don't know why. Doesn't really matter. They said I wasn't William Morris material. But I started booking bands pretty much that day. I booked the only bands that would work with me, because I was the least powerful agent in the entire business. And because of that, I had to call my company Bug Booking. I had to bug people so much to book the bands. This was a long time ago. It was phones. And yeah, you would just call the clubs. They'd like hang up on me. It would be busy. They'd say, call back at these times. You'd call back at those times. They wouldn't answer. It was insane. But I still booked tours. One of those bands I still book today. They're called Low. And another one of those bands is called Hum, who went on to sell 1 million records a few years later. And they kept working with me. So my little agency grew a bit. I moved to Chicago from New York. In Chicago at that time, there was an incredible independent music scene. The great record labels were there. Touch and Go, Thrill Jockey, Drag City, a lot of dance labels. And I moved to Chicago because of that, and because I was offered a deal to live above a legendary rock club, like one of the best rock clubs ever in the history of rock clubs. It was called Lounge Acts, and they said I could live there for $100 a month.
Wow.
I said yes before I really saw the place, and when I did see the place, it didn't really cross my mind that this isn't really an apartment, and I don't know how loud it's going to be. But I lived there for a year and a half, and I absolutely loved it. And then a few months after that, I got a call from the owner of an amazing independent agency called Billions, and I worked there for 8 years. I grew my roster. I got into electronic music along the way, and I ended up signing Aphex Twin, Square Pusher, Cold Cut, like tons of seminal electronic artists, Diplo, Fortet, Caribou, it was not called Caribou then, and on and on and on. And I ended up leaving Billions because, for a lot of different reasons, I think I don't know, I thought I could do more for my clients if more of the money I was bringing in was spent servicing the clients that I had. So I started the Windish agency out of my apartment in Chicago, no longer above a rock club, but just a little 2-bedroom apartment. I had about 40 clients maybe, and then that company eventually grew to about 12 or 1,300 artists and about 80 employees with offices in 5 or 6 cities. We were booking 25,000 concerts a year, 30, 40, almost 50 artists at Coachella every year, I'd say. Many of the most critically acclaimed artists that were playing South by Southwest at the time, we were really known for finding things early. And I think we didn't wait for things to happen. A lot of the other agencies, I think, at that time were waiting for the record company to do something or the band to get played on radio or something, and we just didn't operate that way. And it went great. Along the way, we discovered many different artists like Lorde, Billie Eilish, Diplo blew up, the 1975, Khruangbin, Hot Chip, LCD Sound System, loads and loads of different artists. And the more successful the company got, the bigger it became, the more challenging it got to fend off our larger competitors. As bands get bigger, then everybody wants to work with them. And eventually I decided to sell the company to one of the large agencies in the States, this company called Paradigm. They had acquired many companies similar to mine. One with the guy who had booked Coldplay since 50 people went to see them, and Ed Sheeran. Another who had booked Dave Matthews and Fish since 100 people went to see them. Another who had booked Tiesto and Skrillex. They were all it was a great group of people. And I worked there for a bunch of years. The pandemic happened. The pandemic was really bad for the live music industry. Paradigm sold its music department to another entrepreneur who was in sports, this guy named Casey Wasserman, and all these agents went there, and now we work at Wasserman. And Wasserman is kicking ass, booking tons of artists. We book a lot of the artists I've already mentioned, not all of them, but a lot of them. We also book Drake, Kendrick Lamar, SZA, Turnstile, loads and loads and loads, and it's fantastic. Yeah.
It's quite a journey. It's quite a journey. There's a lot to unpack there. A lot to unpack. I think the first thing that stood out to me was going back to your days in college. I'm just imagining a freshman or a sophomore at school being able to book any act that he wants to come and play at your college and all the fun that comes with that.
I mean, as long as they would agree to go to Binghamton, New York, which is right in the center of New York State, for whatever a measly amount of money that I had to pay them. But a lot agreed, a lot.
And I think what I find compelling about that is that it's not like you had the perfect playbook down to how to book an artist. You just figured it out, you know. And I feel like there's something so interesting that with music to say that there's not one right way to go about doing this. And I would love for you to maybe talk about like what were those very early practices that you developed when you were booking some of these acts very early on in college?
Be relentless. That's kind of it. I think a lot of like the things I've had, the DNA that I've gotten out of even mowing lawns, like I've just applied to things in life, which was basically do it. You know, go do the work, do a good job, come back a week later, do it again. Simple stuff, you know, word of mouth, simple little branding, you know. When I had bug booking, I was like putting plastic bugs in the mailers that I would send out with a CD or a tape of the band, and I would stamp a bug on it. I would print these contracts out on a dot matrix printer and stamp a bug on it, but like simple branding stuff, you know. But the main thing was just be relentless, you know, like, and always like keep thinking like, what else can I do? At that time, it was just me. But then as it grew too, it was very collaborative, and the small group of people that were working together, we're all in the same room and bouncing ideas off of each other all the time. And I think everyone being relentless and feeding off of the energy, you know. There was kind of never a dull moment.
Right. And you mentioned that you guys were always very early to things, and I'd love for you to maybe talk more about like what did you look for in those acts very early on in your career, and then even as you were getting bigger with your agency, like what did being early mean to you, and what were some of those key things you looked for in your artists?
The really simple answer is if I liked them. I think that I love when I hear something that's unlike anything I've ever heard before. So someone's just playing the drums differently, or the bass is different, whatever. The rhythm is a little bit different. The way the voice is processed or just comes out. Whatever shape that takes, if I like the way it sounds, I'll reach out and say, hey, what's going on? I guess I've never been really afraid to reach out to people either, even though I'm like kind of introverted in a lot of ways. For whatever reason, like, I guess I didn't really have a choice, you know. I had to like go talk to people, so I just do it.
Yeah.
And also like at an early, I got very used to no's, you know, as the booker in college, you know, most of the bands that I wanted to book did say no, you know, and I never got hung up on that. It's just like, oh, who is the yes going to be?
Yeah.
And to this day, like, I think that's a very important part of the way I approach things. When I do work with an artist and I'm thinking, what should we do with them? I get together with my team and we brainstorm like every idea we can possibly think of. Crazy ones, very realistic ones. And then I reach out to people and talk to them about the artist and, you know, say, this is the music, I think this is really cool, what do you think? And then the ones that say yes, that's the path that opens up, you know?
Yeah.
Now I might approach 100 people and get told no by 99 of them, you know, or maybe all 100. And that's okay. I don't like bury my head in the sand at that point. I just like, if that happens, I come up with more ideas. And it's not just me, like the team of people.
Right. And how do you think about talking to artists? Because I think for a lot of people that are working in the music business, there's kind of this interesting challenge that comes up where there's an artist that you identify that you really like, you see that there's a lot of potential for them, and like you said, you reach out and you just say, hey, what's going on? But what does that look like from there? Like, what are some questions that you're asking the artist, or how do you eventually get them to want to work with you and actually be booking them for the majority of their career?
So, I mean, an agent's relationship with an artist is different than a manager's relationship. So sometimes when I'm reaching out, I'm not actually reaching out to the artist. You know, I'm reaching out to whatever the email address is that I can find, and often it will go to the manager or, the person who's helping them with business. And I just want to find out from whoever that person is, what's the deal? Where's this person from? Where are you from? If I am talking to the artist, what drives you? How serious are you? How much training do you have? There's no right or wrong answers to any of this stuff, though. You know, I mean, I've met people that started making music recently. Others who've been making it since they were 3. And I wish I had, key things that I could say, like, oh, that's gonna, better chance of success because of this or that. But I don't. If I like the music and they seem cool and they seem like good people, and they want to work, and they want to go for it, great. But even those answers mean very different things to different people, and I can't be too hung up on them either. Some of the artists I work with are very young, and like when I signed Billie Eilish, she was 14 or 15. And if I was 14 or 15 and someone was saying, like, do you want to play concerts? Do you want to go on tour around the world? I don't really think I'd be able to process what that means exactly, other than like some images you've seen and videos and stuff of people playing shows. And it's okay, Other artists will say, like, I want to play Madison Square Garden, or, I want to be a star. And either way is fine. If I like the music and people want to go for it, great. Sometimes, everyone's figuring things out along the way. They might figure out, I don't like this, or I don't want to tour very much, or I want to play as many days a year as I can. And either way, it's fine.
Right.
I might not want to be the agent for them if they hate playing shows, and
right.
it makes them miserable. And sometimes that's the case,
Yeah.
Sometimes I still do want to work with an artist that doesn't want to play many shows. I've worked with Aphex Twin for 15 or 20 years, and I've booked less than 10 shows for him, maybe about 10. But I'm very proud of those shows. It's very unfortunate. Last year, actually, when I booked, he played at Coachella, and he played at the same time as Billie Eilish. And Billie, I also booked her there. That was the biggest show I've ever booked in my career, so I had to make a choice of who I was going to go see. I did see some Aphex Twin, and then I had to sprint through 100,000 people to catch Billie. It was very, very odd.
Good problem to have. Good problem to have.
Yeah.
How much of your job is you introducing new music culture to the world versus you recognizing what people want and then giving it to them?
It would be nice to say that it's me introducing people for some ego thing, but it's not like that. I can tell a little bit when people are interested in things, and things are bubbling. Often it's very hard to tell how that bubbling is going to develop. Will it fizzle out, or will it really turn into something significant? Sometimes it's obvious. When I heard Billie Eilish, she had maybe 1 million plays on SoundCloud of Ocean Eyes. The song was incredible, and even though maybe 1 million doesn't sound like a lot in a way, that was a lot at the time, and it was just obvious, this is great. When I heard Royals by Lorde, it was similar. Didn't mean it blew up overnight, but it didn't take some master music connoisseur to know this is really, really good. Other times, I don't know. Other times it's just not as clear.
Yeah.
But I don't really care.
Yeah.
I like the music. And I'm not thinking about like how far do I think that this can go. I'm thinking like, I really like this music. It'd be really, really cool to be able to work with this artist. And who knows, you know, whatever happens, as long as everyone's happy, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful because obviously the topic of this conversation is artist development. And in a lot of ways, I think developing an artist comes from the passion you have for their music in the first place. Like, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to sell an act to venues and to book a tour and whatnot if you're not individually really excited about it. And I think it's something that's interesting to highlight with the industry today is that there's a lot of like quick hits these days, you know, with the emergence of TikTok and these viral videos and whatnot. An artist can go from having 100 followers to having a song with 50 million plays in the course of a month. You know, and I guess I'm curious to hear for you as you think about booking artists today versus when you started, is there a different process or formula you're trying to follow now, or is it just the same thing? Do I like the music and is there something here?
It's the same thing. I mean, like, developing artists and how to do that and all the conversation around it is kind of a funny thing to me. I think like people spend a lot of time talking about that, but people aren't spending enough time making great music and talking about how to make that better and going to the studio and collaborating with people and making it better. And then other people that aren't making the music, but people who are the developers, people like agents and managers and marketers and stuff, like, you just gotta be in the trenches, you know? You gotta go after those 100 people and see who says yes. You gotta keep going and going and going. You gotta be relentless, and just build. And spend as little time talking about what's not working as you can, because it's just emotion and energy and space that's taking away from the time you could be spending looking for the yeses, you know, looking for the things to build upon.
That's right.
And you need as many people working on side with you, you know. It's not necessarily just one, but if you have one more person helping you, great, or two, or, I mean, 2 more, 3 more. It doesn't take that many people for amazing things to happen. I'm seeing that, like, I manage an artist now. I started managing an artist during the pandemic. A very, very different thing than being the agent. I really wish I had managed someone 25 years ago, because I'm learning so much as an agent. I feel like I'm getting my graduate degree, master's degree in music development right now as a manager, and I don't have to pay for it, and I'm loving it. I mean, being in school at my age is, you know, it's really fun. But it's, I don't know. It's great.
I mean, what I find so impressive about your story is just the consistency with it. You know, you mentioned it's been over the course of 3 decades. And I think one thing that we were talking about backstage is I asked you, if you were to be starting Windish today, what would it be? What would it look like that feels different from when you started it originally? And I'm curious to hear where that question took you, and then maybe how you think about building your business in a world like what exists today.
Yeah, so my regrets are, and they're related to like the issues I see with artist development today, but my regrets are that I don't know who went to any of those shows. I don't have that many records of those shows, and I have contracts and stuff, but it would be amazing, and this ties into artist development. There's so much data out there, but our industry as a whole is not doing that much with it. There's a few segments that are doing stuff to their benefit, more to their benefit than the benefit of artists. But yeah, I wish I knew the 100 people that went to the first show I ever booked, you know, and every person that went to every show we ever booked after. I wish I had a poster of every show and a flyer and an image of the ticket. I wish I had all the photos that people took, you know, or felt like sharing. I wish I I wish I knew who went to which shows, you know. Oh, this person went and saw LCD Sound System and Caribou and so-and-so. Maybe they like to go to this party that we're going to throw, you know. We never did anything like that. It's very interesting to think about if we had done that, or if we're to do that again, being able to do stuff with that information.
Yeah.
Rank people and give them access to things. You know, these are like Web3 type things that got me very excited about Web3. That maybe this technology will make it easier for us to do that sort of thing. I just haven't seen that actually come to fruition yet.
Right.
But it would be amazing. Like, I was living in Chicago for a long time, and I would do these DJ parties at this great little club. I would DJ and like book other people to DJ there, and I would hand out flyers of the shows that I was booking. I mean, I was booking tours, but I would hand out flyers for the Chicago show, and I'd invite people to these shows, and it actually helped like draw attention to these gigs we were booking, and it's just interesting to think about like if we were connected digitally, how much easier that would have been, and how powerful that would have been.
Right.
We could have done a lot with that.
Right. And I think that the seed's been planted for those ideas. I want to go deeper down the Web3 rabbit hole and what got you excited about it. But before we do that, talk to me about the emergence of social media with relation to music. Because I'm sure that there was a long period of time where there was no social media platforms to market music on, which is basically all we know today. Like, how did that coming to the fold change the way that you developed artists and that you worked with artists? Because I think that's a good precedent for us to think about how Web3 can eventually affect artists' careers as well.
I'll have a funny answer for that. When I started, there was no email. The first social media I used was Friendster. And I probably joined Friendster when there were 100 people in Chicago on Friendster. And I spent a lot of time, but people were joining like every day, you know? So then the next day there'd be 150 people in Chicago and 200. And I would search who in this zip code, or these 3 zip codes, likes Aphex Twin? Who likes Boards of Canada? And then I would just say, add friend. And then if they accepted me, I'd be like, hey, want to come to this club night we have? And by the way, Kid Koala is DJing at Metro. And I was doing this stuff like by hand. Then MySpace came along, and it was like Friendster times 10 or something, with kind of a music, as music was a big part of its DNA. We were very proud of, you could select songs or artists that you liked or something, and that was like a big deal. Like, who should we put? Like, I'm moving this band, they're not cool anymore. I'm putting this new thing up, and it's gonna make me look cool. But I took that stuff kind of seriously. And we lean on it a little bit for artist development, but agents aren't as involved in like the promotion of things as some of the other people in the ecosystem, like the venue itself or the promoter.
Right. And I think what I find compelling about that is that there's a sense of, especially in Web3 music today, from my perspective, the core identity around the people that are collecting music today and being very active in the space, like it's a passion for them. You know, it's a very similar DNA to you, where I think we're at a point where it's not like the average fan is going out and like actively collecting music on chain or doing any of these on chain actions that you're mentioning. It's people who are very forward about their passion for music itself. And it sounds like there are parallels to the early days of MySpace, where it really takes someone to be excited and passionate about their relationship with music and the social experience around it for them to actually care about going through the hoops and using this new technology and whatnot. And I guess I'm curious to hear as a question, how do you think about the current state of where this Web3 music scene has developed over the course of the last year or two, or even more broadly, just what your interest in Web3 has allowed you to find as someone who's been active in the future of technology for so long now?
Like, what am I excited about?
Yeah, and then more practically than that, 2-part question. 1, what are you excited about? But 2, what do you think the reality is of the space today? Because I think that there's a very different hope for the future and what excites you versus the practicality of what exists today, and I'd love to kind of separate that into 2 parts.
I mean, one of the things that I thought was really cool was Water and Music. To me, they were making more interesting research and news than things like Billboard and like the current state of publications, you know? And you could kind of feel that Water and Music is not subject to its advertisers in any way. I think that something comes out in posting a lot that you can tell if an artist is getting paid to do something, you know? You can tell when you read Billboard somehow, like it's just, there's something going on here. In the way that they're writing these things and what they're writing about. And in Water and Music, like, that doesn't exist. And I love the idea of a world where that, like, commerce is not influencing opinions about where things, you know, about writing.
Right.
So I was really into that. I thought Friends with Benefits was super, super interesting. To be able to, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying with Windish Agency. Like, if I knew who these people were that went to each of these shows, I feel like that would have been a lot of the members of FWB. When I went to the FWB party in Miami, maybe it was a couple of years ago or something, they had an event. I looked around and I was like, this feels like the first Pitchfork festival that I went to. And by that I mean, I looked around at that Pitchfork and like, this is a lot of friends of mine, or people that I really respected, awesome people that were doing awesome things in music, that were really driven to buy music and to help in music. And I was like, man, this is like the beginning of something. And like, they know who those people are. And they know that they were there. That's powerful. So stuff like that excites me. And I'm still very intrigued in the idea of being able to support artists as a group. Like, how do I explain that a little bit better? I kind of, like, I was obsessed with labels in the old days, like Warp Records, Ninja Tune, a lot of other ones. Year One today is a great label. Discord Records, Touch and Go, Drag City, and there was like a community to each of these labels, and an identity or something, and it was like a kind of a badge of honor or coolness that, whatever, like, you chose one or many of them and you're kind of obsessed with them. It's interesting to me now to think about knowing who the people are that follow that label and those followers actually investing in the artist.
Or the label.
Yeah, or the label. I just haven't seen it, I haven't figured out or seen it play out in a way that makes sense yet. But I feel like, you know, it's getting closer.
I'm definitely seeing some examples on my end. I'll give a quick shout out to the Loners Collective by Rio Cragen. You know, like, it's a Web3 forward music label, and everyone's collecting the music, using that music to vote on who they want to see on the label, et cetera. So there's some early signs there. And I think the thing that stands out to me that you just highlighted is the cultural DNA of these communities, I think, is so important, because the music that comes through these groups is very heavily influenced by its members. You know, and I think that right now we're at a stage where you can kind of buy access into these entities in a more fluid way, whether that be collecting an NFT or buying a token. But I think to your point, there's still a lot of work to be done around who showed up to that FWB Miami party. You know, there was a PO-op going around, but it's not like 100% of people that attended collected that. You know, it's maybe a small fraction of it. And I think a lot of what I think about for this next chapter of music and technology is how do you make these very simple ideas of figuring out who attended a concert be so fluid that it's not like you have to go out of your way to be the cool kid to collect a PO-op because you know that PO-op exists. It just happens as an underlying DNA of going to a show. Because at that point, I think that's when you really start to get the network effects. And I think a lot of the blockers with the industry today is that it's so difficult to do these very simple actions that the vast majority of the people going won't do them in the first place.
Yeah, and I don't know, I went to Disney World about a year ago or something, and I was like, wait, these guys are already, they're doing everything that Web3 is talking about doing, but they just do it.
Yeah.
Not in Web3, they just do it. I didn't even have to register and say, I'm here. They know. They know I'm here. They know everywhere I am.
Yeah.
And they're marketing stuff to me, and they're giving me deals and telling me I can be in the front of the line, and they know that I watched this thing last week, and that my kid watched this other thing 50 times. They know all that. And they're making smart business decisions because of it. So yeah, I mean, I feel like that can be done in a micro way if that could be done in a micro way inexpensively, with as little steps as possible for the fans, the consumers or whatever, that could be a great thing.
Yeah. I think a question I ask myself a lot now is making something easier to use is obviously very important, but I think that it being cool is actually a very significant driver of whether people adopt it or not. You know, you highlighted MySpace and people putting these bands in their profile, and it was signifying that they aligned with this different music taste. And I feel like in a lot of ways what I'm thinking more about now is, to be completely honest, I don't think that Web3 is the hot new thing in the world anymore. You know, I think that there's the emergence of AI and these other industries that are really exciting to people. And so the question now becomes, what is the thing that makes Web3 stay relevant and cool in a world where there's going to be all this new and exciting technology? And I'd be curious to hear if you have any insights into, first and foremost, how you saw technology play a role in making music cool in the past, and then what you think that looks like with the world of Web3 today.
God, that's a tricky question. I don't know. I don't know. Ask me a different question.
It's definitely a tricky question, but I ask that because I think that it's so core to what makes all of this stuff work. You know, I feel like a big reason why NFTs got so popular is that it was cool to wear your PFP as a profile picture on Twitter. You know, and there was kind of like an in crowd with joining FWB or going to these shows and whatnot. And I think in the absence of that, which is kind of where the market is today, kind of in no man's land. You know, and I think people are excited about the ideas that Web3 has to offer. But I think that in a lot of ways, a lot of companies and people that are in the space just trying to figure out where to spend their time now because it's not cool to collect NFTs anymore. It's just the reality of the situation. And so I guess just as someone who's been so, you know, prevalent in the music industry for so long, like what word of advice would you give to someone that's really questioning their identity that's been built so much around this new space that, you know, is very underdeveloped in a lot of ways?
I mean, think about utility. What do people need? What do artists need? What do the people that work with artists need? I think that the music industry is in a bad place right now, like a very tricky place. All this data exists, and most of the industry isn't doing anything with it. Mm-hmm. Amazon's doing a lot with it. You know, all these big companies are doing a lot with it. So much, and they've been doing this stuff for decades. And yet, when an artist who is amazing and can sell 300 tickets in 20 cities, like, they don't have the email addresses, they don't have the cell numbers. There's all these things that, you know, you're supposed to do. There's platforms that you can use to do that thing, do those things. They don't have time to do any of that. Mm-hmm. It's hard enough for them to figure out how to, like, get out the door and get to the gig, or pay for the studio, or, like, make sure the bass player's there. These companies should think about and talk with artists and people that really work with artists. I've worked with artists for a long time, not at record companies, but like as managers. What are your challenges? What do you need help with? Mm-hmm. Because they need a lot of help. Yeah. And I'm not talking about the handful of managers that have tons of employees. Most managers have like no employees or one or something. Managers are supposed to do like 25 or 30 different things these days. Before, record labels did like half those things, but that changed in the last 10 years. Now, record labels don't do much. You know, they give you money, they own your copyright. They exist to like make as much money off of that copyright ownership as possible, and then do it as many times as they possibly can with different artists. And like marketing, developing, touring the artists, social media, all that stuff is on the shoulders of the manager now. I think, yeah, one place to look, if I was a technology company, to ask managers.
Yeah.
What do you need help with?
Yeah.
Because they need help with tons of stuff.
I think a lot of it comes down to the core thing you highlighted early on, which is just identifying who are the fans of this music. And it sounds like a very simple thing, but we live in a world today where an artist will have 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify, but if I ask them, where does your community hang out, they can't give me a good answer. You know, and I think that the industry has tried to make Discord this thing that all artists are using now, but most artists I know hate Discord, and they're only in there because they are being told to be in there, not because they actually want to be.
Discord. I mean, Discord's one of 10 different things you're supposed to be doing, you know? You're supposed to be crushing TikTok. Labels don't want to sign you if you're not. You got to be doing your Instagram. You need to have lots of streams of Spotify. Then there's Snap. There's lots of people there. There's all these different places that you're supposed to be. There's the emailing your fans. You're supposed to be texting your fans. So much stuff, and artists don't have time to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
They're lucky. I'm lucky when I find an artist who's good at doing one of those things these days. You know, it's hard to get good at one of those things. And yeah, being good at 10 of them, and 10 of them is not even enough.
Yeah.
You know, like Discord is like the 11th one.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of challenges out there. And I think it's opportunity.
Totally. And I think to the question of developing an artist, something that I'm finding relevant in my music career is finding that one thing that artist is good at and really giving them the time to nurture and develop that, I think is extremely important. You know, and even if you look at a space like Web3 right now, I would argue that Web3 is probably the 12th thing on that list, which is like if you're an artist that's active in the space, there's an entirely new set of challenges. But I think one of the opportunities is that if you find an artist that is very passionate about using these new platforms and using this new technology, it actually might be better to over-index on their career in the back of a new space like Web3 versus trying to develop them on a TikTok or an Instagram or something like that where there's a million other artists doing the same thing. You know, I say to the acts that I work with, I'm like, where's the one space that you are uniquely positioned to do well in? And if you're uniquely positioned to do well in that space, don't worry about trying to compete with all the other spaces because you have an angle here. And it's so hard to have any leverage in the music industry today that once you find that small thing that's working for you, nurture that, even if it's only 10 people, because those 10 people are going to be the ones that really allow you to have this career and actually go to prominence at some point later down the line.
I mean, it's similar to me when I come up with 100 ideas and call people about all of them and see which one sticks, you know. Artists are looking for the paths of least resistance that give them the most success as quickly as possible, I guess, you know, and then they will double down on the ones that work. So if they post on Instagram or, you know, do funny stuff there and people are engaging and their audience is growing, they'll do more there. You know, if it's working on TikTok, they'll do more there. If it's not, like they'll lose interest and enthusiasm, and it'll be dispiriting to keep posting and have no one like it, you know, and they'll move to a different place.
Totally.
And I agree with you, like, they should try. But you go on Instagram, like, you sign up in a couple steps. I mean, everyone's already on it anyway, and, you know, you hit a button and you're posting instantly. To get into Web3 is a lot more complicated, I would say.
I agree.
You know, so the path of least resistance is, there's more resistance there.
Right.
And they just don't have time, you know.
Yeah.
They could spend every minute that they're awake working on music, and that still wouldn't be enough time to work on music in some cases, you know. So when you think about all the different options and things that they could or should be doing, like, there's just not enough time.
Right. And I think this speaks to the importance of developing a team around you as an artist today. You know, if you think about what artist development looks like today, in my opinion, it's actually finding more of a core team that's working with you on a full-time basis that you can actually develop your brand and have more time to focus on music so someone else can work on your social media strategy or content creation. And one thing that I think is very interesting about the world as an artist today is I'm noticing that like a content person is like becoming an essential hire for pretty much every team, where all the artists I know in LA are just saying like, I want someone to come sit in my studio and just film me 10 hours a day so that they can make like 3 to 5 short form clips to post on TikTok and Instagram. And like even that as an example is such a net new, career path for someone with relation to an artist's journey. That's just fascinating to think about how different all these things are. And like you said, or go ahead, did you have a thought?
I mean, you're talking about artists that are at a higher level than most that I start working with. To be able to employ someone, or even find someone who is willing to work for free, creating content for you, is like an incredible luxury for the people that I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm mostly talking about you have a great artist, and there's a manager, someone who has chosen to like help figure out how to do this. They don't have much formal training, at least they haven't managed before,
Yeah.
That's most of the artists that I come across today. And yeah, it's incredibly challenging for them. And if it starts to move, who are the next people that start to work with them? Like maybe they get an agent that helps them with shows, Just because they have an agent doesn't mean that the manager knows how to get a band on the road.
Yeah.
To budget a tour, or maybe they can figure out a budget, but they don't know how to pay for it. There's so many hurdles.
Yeah. And I think that first step of just allowing an artist to live on the back of their music is so important to highlight here, because it's really, really hard. And it's only becoming harder, in many ways. And I think something that I'm so just like impressed by you is that you've taken so many of these artists that you've worked with so early on in their career, and you've really given them the opportunity to survive on the back of their music by the simple act of getting them shows to play. And I think it's a well-known, fact in the industry today that for a lot of artists that are touring, you really take a bet early on. It's not like you play shows and automatically you're making $10,000 a month. A lot of artists that I know, and maybe you can help, speak to this, is they'll go do their first headline tour and they'll be on the road for 3 months and they'll come back and they'll break even or they'll lose money. And they're basically just doing that for exposure. And I'm curious to hear how you think about that sacrifice that an artist has to make early on in their career when it comes to touring to be able to get to the point of playing Coachella and playing those arenas.
You got to do it. You got to do it. The reality today is that it takes longer, more tours where you lose money or don't make any money than it ever has. And it's because there's so many artists out there. It's harder than ever to be a new artist for a lot of reasons, because there's so many. Because there's so many artists in general. Fans don't have time to focus on new artists. All of the other bands that they've liked forever are also now releasing music and touring. So it's more challenging than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking a second ago, you just kind of made me remember back. I feel like I hit the lottery probably at that first concert that I put on in college, the best night of my life up until that point, because I found the thing that made me happy.
Yeah.
I never thought about the money of any of it, like, kind of ever. And I think that's a big part of it, It was the thing that brought me great joy. It's the thing that I just wanted to spend my time doing, It's what I did. I didn't go to class. I hung up flyers.
Yeah.
And I went and made calls and tried to find bands to come play this college. And everything since then has been related to like that task. And it's awesome,
Yeah.
And I think it's something else people in this space that are trying to figure it out, like, artists need to make music that makes them feel that way, Like, that should be their single focus.
Yeah.
And fans are attracted to that immensely, They want to feel connection to it. They want to feel close, Things that make that easier are fantastic. But they're drawn by people that are so enmeshed in just making crazy shit come out of their brains, in an oral form.
Yeah. I think there's something so powerful to that, and I think that what that response says to me is focus on what makes an artist happy to be alive and to just exist, and don't worry about trying to make them a ton of money, because one thing that I've noticed is the second that making them money goes away, they're gonna not care about you anymore. If that's your relationship with the artist, is that you make them money and then you're not making them money, they're gonna go to the next person that's making them more money. But I think to your point, part of the reason why you've probably had such a long career with artists that you've worked with is, first and foremost, you are making them money, but I feel like the core intention there is not to make them money, it's to actually allow them to tell their story in the most meaningful way possible and put this in front of people that want to experience it. And when you center yourself from that perspective, like you said, it's not really about the money, that's just the byproduct of you being able to tell the best stories possible.
It's funny, I hear that the phrase often, like, they blew up overnight, or they blew up quick. And I think you could almost always say, like, that's never true. When you look at Turnstile and how long they've been doing this. But even Billie, who blew up quick, she had been working on music for like 3 years before I met her. And she didn't play a show for another year or year and a half after I met her. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And then that show there was 60 at, and it was a slowish progression. It's the way it is. People should be patient, and it takes a long time. I'm looking for people that want to do this for the rest of their life.
Right.
And I recognize that they don't know that when I meet them at 18 years old or 22 years old or whatever, or in the case of the artist I managed, 39 years old. But when you say, would you like to do this for the rest of your life? When you contemplate that question, like, yeah, yes, or maybe yes. I'd like that to be, the answer.
Yeah.
I recognize, like, well, maybe, maybe not, if I can't make it work. But anyway, yeah.
I think there's something so powerful to just giving that artist that belief too. I feel like in a lot of ways, it's very difficult for an artist to believe in themselves, especially when things aren't going well. That goes for any facet of life, but I think that one of the core roles that, an agent or a manager, anyone that's on an artist team can play is just giving that artist the reassurance that you can do this. Even if things aren't going super well right now, there is a path forward here, and you being able to empower that artist and actually give them the, opportunity to believe in themselves. I think that's such a core, integral piece of the puzzle. It goes understated in a lot of ways.
The double-edged sword of being a manager.
Yeah.
It's not all like rosy, it's one of the benefits of being an agent. Like, I'm there for the high points. When they come off stage of a great show, like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, a manager talks them through all the low points too. Whether it's the review wasn't great, or no one listened to the single, or you get turned down by something. Artists like deal with that in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I assume. I don't even really know how they deal with it, because I've only managed one artist, and I'm learning about it now. And it's different. It's different like every day or every week for her.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to me for a second about what you think the future of live shows looks like, because I think there's actually quite a lot to unpack there, and we don't have to go super deep into the details, but personally I've been thinking a lot about the concerts that I go to today, the festivals I go to today, the introduction of new technology at these events. How do you see live shows evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, I think there's been a lot of money is spent on production. There's been sort of an arms race in dance music. There's been an arms race of like how much music you can bring, or how many lights you can bring, and smoke, and all this stuff. I think that the cost of a lot of that will decrease immensely. I've seen products that you can do amazing things with things through your phone or through like little boxes and stuff. And I think that's really, really interesting. And that will put great power in the hands of more and more people.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I was at this company called Teenage Engineering in Stockholm a couple days ago. They do a lot of things, but they make synthesizers, keyboards for barely any. A lot of them are very cheap. There's one that's $50, and I mean, I don't know all the details of it, but I mean, let's say it's more powerful than a keyboard that would cost $10,000 5 years ago or something.
Right.
And now, like, you can buy it for $50. Like, that's incredible. And when I think about like what advances like that will do to live shows, it's really, really exciting.
Yeah.
To think like the show that a band spent $500,000 to put on stage with the lights and all of the stuff, and for that to cost $500 in the future, or
Yeah.
$5,000 or whatever, that's incredibly exciting to me. And that's coming. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I think about. What else? I mean, I've been obsessed with like the idea of virtual artists on stage in a live format.
Same.
Since Hatsune Miku and just other, I don't know, anime and that type of thing. I'm excited to see that evolve and for there to be more of it. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm sure there'll be stuff that makes me want to vomit, but other things that I think is just incredible.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I don't think about going to shows in the metaverse very much. I watched shows on live streams and stuff during the pandemic, and didn't hate some of it. Being able to do that in a way where it feels more like you're there is interesting to me. But we'll see. I'm like excited about all this stuff. I feel like it's all possibility, and I'm excited to see what creative people do with tools that are provided.
Yeah. I think that virtual concerts and virtual artists are the new frontier. I think right now it's not something that people are very excited about. It's not something that feels very obvious at the moment, but I'm really excited about this world where you can have 1.5 million people concurrently all watching the same show at the same time. I think we live in a world today where there's so much power in being able to tour a show around the world and be able to play for different markets and have them all be their own unique experience. But I guess something that I'm excited about is this idea of having a show for everyone all at the same time and what that unlocks. To your point about collecting or showing who attended or being able to see these different data points and whatnot, when you put that into a virtual environment, I think that it's very, very exciting. And so I think one of the underlying things that will help us get there is figuring out what is the throughput where if you go to a physical show today, what are those actions that are going to carry over to you attending a digital concert? Whether it be like using your ticket to get into the show that's digital and maybe collectible or something like that, or being able to buy merchandise that has a physical and a digital component to it. I think a lot about just the power of QR codes at live shows and how underutilized they are in the world today.
I think about that too. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's virtual meet and greets seem interesting to me.
Yeah.
To be able to go talk to an artist that you love without the physical. That's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
That costs an artist money to make it so you can physically have a meet and greet and that type of thing. And but it's very cool to be able to offer that to your fans.
Right. Well, I think we're in a good spot here. I want to kind of close us with just kind of centering around the question for today, which was artist development, what that looks like in the world. Obviously, we covered quite a lot in this conversation, and I think we went in a lot of different directions. As a closing thought, what would you say to people who are in the audience looking to learn more about the future of music and where to get involved in the next places to get started?
Find a great artist. Find a great artist and dig in. Find as many people as you can to like get on board and help. I mean, in saying that, like that seems like one of the most exciting things about possibility in the future.
Yeah.
And like there's that organization. Is it called With? And Navac and things like that. Like those are examples where you find a great artist, you get a bunch of people to jump on and help in any way they can.
Yep.
I'm very excited to see like what that leads to.
Right.
People are going to crack that code. one of them is going to be the next Warp Records.
100%.
And that's really, really cool. So I challenge some people to do that.
I love that. And if people want to stay up with your journey and what you're working on now, what's the best way to do so?
I mean, you can follow me on Instagram, just Tom Windish.
Nice.
It's, pictures of kids, ice cream, cats, concerts, art, architecture.
And do you want to give a quick plug to any of the artists that you're currently working with and some music for people to check out?
Well, the artist I manage is named Danielle Ponder, and I think she is really incredible. I just started working with an artist last night from Madrid named Ralphie Chu. I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about this artist, Flower of Love. I am excited about so much music.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it just keeps you going. I mean, I find it so impressive. It's been 3+ decades, and you're still out here in Madrid signing artists, in the year 2023.
Yeah, let's go. I want to hear more.
Yeah, so this conversation's been amazing for me. Thank you guys so much for coming out, and thank you to Primavera for hosting us, and I'm excited for the rest of the day. So thank you guys for coming.
All right, thanks.